School. Shigambo is an educational organization that provides education and academic services to our students. Nowadays, students are more on technology. If you want the student to pay attention to your teaching and learning, to your lesson, if you want the students to concentrate, it's only once you are integrating technology in your lesson. And that's one aspect that has to be really considered. Now, education nowadays is no longer about textbook and an educator or a teacher. It is about other aspects that have to be looked at. And for us to have all the resources, we have to gather all the resources only through connectivity, internet connectivity. Because you see what is happening with MTC. Now, number one is speed. Number two is reliable. Number three is stable. Number four is the team. Now, we are talking about support. Whenever we happen to experience a very little problems and then you have to give them a call, now the team will be available, and after all, the problem is rectified. And that's exactly why we decided to say MTC is the best for us.
Welcome back to Windhoek Makea Hotel as we continue to come live here in the capital city of the Republic of Namibia at the 8th National ICT Summit. It's day 2 and all things are going well so far. We had quite interesting presentations earlier before we took a short break, but this time around we're going to have an interesting discussion, and I want my colleague Asteria and Jaja to take us through.
Thank you so much.
There we go, technology.
Adapt or die. Okay, so it's good to see that everybody is awake and back to actually listen to our panel discussion. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all the panelists here because of equally important tasks that they have to attend to, and but Mr. Opperdian is here. He is the head of India-Namibia Center of Excellence in Information Technology, which is established at NAST. And he's going to take us through some of the few questions that we have actually prepared, and he'll give an overview from his point of view on how ready is Africa when it comes to artificial intelligence as the route way to actually African transformation when it comes to the digital landscape. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, I would like to pose to you the first question. What is your assessment on Africa's readiness or current ICT infrastructure when it comes to the capacity and the implementation of AI technologies effectively?
Well, Africa is developing well in ICT infrastructure, and if we talk about the internet, definitely expanding day by day. But still, if you compare, we have disparities between, rural areas and urban regions, where you find, urban regions are specifically more advanced in terms of ICT infrastructure. But still, if you see rural areas are lacking behind, and to support them, definitely we need more advanced infrastructure, more support in terms of internet connectivity, so that it can be able to capacity to implement AI throughout the continent. So I think definitely needs a lot of efforts in that area to implement AI with the internet connectivity as well as processing capacity.
That's a very good observation from your side. Speaking about us doing perhaps more within this AI space in the country, let's talk about how government can play a role in ensuring that we really adapt to AI.
I think government plays very crucial role, especially in terms of policy, framework design, and I would also suggest that government has to look into the policies which can encourage the public-private partnership, because if you encourage, definitely you can bring in more technological support, not only from internally but from outside as well, because we need more partnerships, more investments to achieve the AI technology readiness in our country, specifically in Africa. And I also think that government should build some incentive-based, AI-based technology, so that, if you encourage business units, encourage institutes and education sector, definitely it can be done many more things into this area.
Well said.
You have spoken about inclusivity and that we really, really need to actually take our infrastructure to the rural areas if we are to be inclusive and actually bring everybody on board. I just wanted to move away from Africa and compare to India or Asia, since you're from there. How are we doing in terms of actually that comparison? How is Africa doing?
I think Africa is doing good, specifically when I talk about that awareness. Yes, with this type of national level event, we are creating great awareness. And if we talk about inclusivity, definitely we should think, the African countries should think in that equality in, access, equality in, education, training. So we should support the root levels, definitely, where education and trainings can be, more enhanced and more inclusive to give more exposure. And that's where we are getting ready to get the latest technology on board.
Very well. Of course, I think the room will be asking themselves in terms of what opportunities does AI present. I think there's a big interest in terms of what can I benefit from AI? We are hearing this word artificial intelligence quite a lot today or for the past 2 days. But what opportunities does it really present? And when you also look at areas such as economic growth, climate change, you name it.
Great. I think this is a very interesting question, that how AI can benefit. If I talk about very basic aspects, AI is benefiting you in your real life as well. You are using smartwatches, right? That is AI. Based on your heartbeats, your temperature, it can make decisions, see how many calories you burned today. Yeah. But let's talk about more over the side of the computing. Definitely AI in health sector, creating a big impact, and also in economic growth. Think about that, the time of pandemic, where AI can help you in terms of diagnosing the diseases, okay, as well as if you see AI in agriculture, a great impact where these days, I would say farmers are smart. Why? Because they are using IoT devices, sensors. You can sit in your office and do farming, okay? You will be definitely surprised, but search and find out what are the technologies coming behind. And that's the miracle of AI. So AI, we are talking much on it, but definitely, ultimately, if you have listened to my presentation yesterday, we were talking about data. Yes. Data is basically, the main role player to give decisions, insightful information, and that can lead to, artificial intelligence.
Maybe just before I give over to my colleague, it's quite interesting. There's also the question of, okay, although it presents all these opportunities in terms of even looking at how many steps we take in a day, I think it has become a thing where we take note of whether we have taken 10,000 steps a day. But then when you look at issues around ethics, how do we deal with issues around ethical use of AI? Because there are questions around whether people use AI ethically. For instance, newsroom people, there are common people that write, and in our famous AI application, which is ChatGPT. Yeah, we cannot run away from it. And perhaps media people will be interested to hear how can we go about, using it ethically when we do our stories? Because AI can perhaps not have that human element in that story that a journalist perhaps is trying to write and so forth. So how do we use it ethically?
Yes, that's an interesting one because I see when you talk about ethically, right, how to use AI ethically. First, we need to look into that. We should not misuse the, AI. Like if I take an example of education sector, I have dealt with many students as well. When the exam times comes, they took, okay, let me search on the chat GPT, it can generate. And one of the question even a student posed me that, Mr. Jain, if chat GPT can do my work, why should I invest my time? And that's the problem. It is making you lazy.
Yeah.
Do not, misuse that. So that is one thing that we should consider ethically. Definitely, as you talk about media house and all, when we publish any news, any information, we should use that way that it should not be biased.
Yes.
Okay, so that is also one of the ethical consideration. One more thing which I would like to mention here about the resources. Okay, when you are looking forward in terms of basic tasks. These days, AI is replacing your basic task. Like earlier in mobiles, we used to search, okay, contacts or something. But today you speak and the contact is available. Even you can say, okay, call me this person. You can do that.
With Siri.
Yeah,
Yes.
Siri and all,
And
right?
Alexa.
It is.
So what I wanted to say that to ethically, if you look into it, definitely we need to reskill. We need to, maintain our work task force on that so that they can use, AI ethically.
In addition to Shoki's question, before we also give our audience a chance to actually ask a few questions, I just wanted to add also, because there was one question from one of our delegates about the risks of actually us getting laid off or losing our jobs because, oh well, if a robot can actually deliver food, why do I need a waiter or why do I need a waitress, for example? So how can we look at this and how can we give our people a solution to say, don't worry, AI is actually not going to replace anybody's job. So it's actually just going to enhance what we are doing.
Exactly. No, very important one. Do not worry about that AI will replace you. No. Definitely you have to improve. Your basic tasks are definitely taken by AI. Okay? But what you can do to be in the top notch, reskill yourself, upgrade yourself, do hard work in terms of learning new things. Do not still be stagnant or stick with the basic things because, technology is coming. Day by day, you see a lot of improvements are coming. So the only way is, you need to upskill because AI is also designed by you as a human being, right? So it's our inventions, our, control is there, but how you can take up, definitely looking forward for more research work, more advanced computing aspects and all, which you can look into it. So that is the way I think we can still be safe around in that.
Well, just before we open up the floor for our viewers as well as our audience right here at Makio Hotel, data protection is becoming quite topical today. When you look at our presenters that also gave presentations on the status quo of our ICT space in the country. But when you look at data protection from an AI perspective, how do we safeguard our personal information? We post so much on that ChatGTP, not knowing that it is harvesting all that information and perhaps using it for, I don't know, for what they basically use, maybe to make money out of it, to use it onto their next customer perhaps, because at the end of the day, one of the speakers did say that, you are using this and you're asking yourself, I'm not paying, but I'm actually the product. So how do we safeguard our personal information, our data, in terms of when it comes to AI also?
Well, I think in this, the most important role play is about awareness. Like even I really appreciate ministry is doing, that cybersecurity awareness program. First of all, we should be very clear about what to share in the public domain and whatnot. Like people are using Facebook, Instagram, and definitely as you are talking about ChatGPT. So we should be very much have a clear concepts on that, what to share, what not, what is your personal information and all. Apart from it, you should also be think on the side of security concern, because data, when you talk about AI, a lot of data is generating, and the side effect is definitely an issue of data privacy.
Yes.
So you need to learn about how you can secure, how you can share securely that data, or how you can manage your belongings, especially when you are talking about the computers, laptops. So how you are dealing with that, definitely you need to look into more. But I think the first step is the awareness. That's the way forward.
And perhaps like the late president would say, common sense. Know what to share and what not to share. Basically, right? Are we together?
Indeed, may his soul rest in peace. I would like also, please, if you have a question, just raise your hand. And wow, okay, we have 3 hands up, 4, 5. Okay, can we have one of the colleagues, please, to share the mic? While the mic is circulating, I also wanted just to look at some of the major challenges that probably African countries face in building skilled workforce when it comes to the support of AI development within the continent.
Okay, the major challenges which I feel is education and skills. Okay, first thing, we need to hit on the roots, right? We need to train our people. We need to skill up. So education and skills, that's one of the challenges. Secondly, if I talk about ICT infrastructure, we need latest ICT infrastructure, which are more compatible with the upcoming latest technologies. And the third one is more collaborations, which we needed, not only between the African countries, but also throughout the world, so that we can exchange knowledge. We can, work collaborative in terms of, harnessing the power of AI and bringing more advancement in the country.
Thank you so much. Can we have our first, okay, Mr. Johannes.
Thank you very much. Mine is probably not a question, but
Sorry
a comment.
to interject. May you please stand up so that our viewers can also see who's speaking?
Okay, thank you. I'm Philemon Johannes. I represent the Ministry of ICT. Mine was not a question, or is not a question, is simply to supplement what Mr. Jane is actually alluded to in terms of the readiness of Africa for AI. Whatever I said is true in the sense that the readiness is actually assessed in terms of, the readiness is actually assessed in terms of the presence of AI strategies in the country, the policies, data protection laws, and the necessary structures such as data protection authorities or agencies of this country. Now, just to give you some facts, what Africa has presented in terms of its AI strategy is as follows. Countries in Africa, out of 54 countries that do not have data protection policies, are only 12. That can already tell you how ready we are. Out of the so many countries, only those 12 do not really have initiatives in that aspect. And then those with a draft of either the AI strategy, data protection laws, I think there are only 2. And then those that have data protection agencies, they are also just around about 3, 4, 5 countries. And then majority of the African countries would either have an AI strategy or would have a policy in the space of data protection or would have established a data protection agency. So these are just some of the facts I wanted to add to your discussion, that we are indeed ready, and Africa has taken note of that. Thank you.
Oh, wow. That's not good enough. We can even emulate if that is the case. Thank you so much, Mr. Johannes. Please stand up, introduce yourself, and then you can pose your question.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Georgina. I work for GIZ at the Namibia Training Authority. So my specialization is digitalization, right now focused on the TVET sector. My question is, we were hearing in some of the presentations about AI that, or we were rather looking at how other westernized countries are doing so. For example, the AI regulations and act that is currently being developed in Europe or in the USA. And I'd have a question and have a comment. I always wonder if we have that hyperfixation on the westernized countries, what they are doing. We sometimes lose, or we have the tendency to lose focus on what the other side is doing because we don't have those massive regulations, which maybe makes sense from their point of view because they want to develop safe AI technologies and so on. But we tend to lose the focus on what, for example, China and India are doing because the massive push for AI technologies are coming from that side because they don't have those extremely restricting regulations and policies in order. So I'm asking the audience maybe and yourself to what would be the balance between having regulations to create only safe AI or trying to control the space of emerging technologies or pushing for new innovations and having a more open door to those technologies. Because right now, I mean, the leads in the forefront are coming from the other side because of that.
Thank you so much for your question. Definitely, as we look to the other countries where we talk about more advancement in pushing up the technologies and artificial intelligence into that, we can't say that the policies and the regulations are restrictive, but definitely we need to engage with the other countries, do collaborative efforts to learn and exchange that how we can expand in terms of like what we have the limitations, okay, in Africa. So we can also walk with them in terms of, getting advancement in terms of technology and, streamline our regulatory frameworks and policies. But I'm sure, like as Mr. Philemon also mentioned about that, most of the African countries, they have these kind of policies and data protection bills and, other things. And maybe Mr. Philemon can add in case if, would like to specifically on the regulation side. So, but in my opinion, what I think is if we collaborate with the other countries, we think on, to walk with them, how they are working, how we can learn, and in Africa, how we can break our limits and constraints to reach up to that level, definitely the other countries would be very helpful in terms of, and specifically I can talk about India because last time the Minister of External Affairs was here and he mentioned in his speech, I would say the name also Dr. S. J. Shankar, External Affairs Minister of India. He also mentioned about the, the collaboration between India and Namibia, that we are open to work together and whatever support required, definitely we can, support. So with that note, which I feel that yes, working together with the other countries, definitely we can learn about how we can streamline our regulatory and frameworks. But I would ask if Mr. Philemon would like to add something on that. Are you okay? All right, is okay with that. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Okay, we can continue the conversation again. And if you have any question on regulations and policies, Mr. Philemon is your plug. From the Ministry of ICT. Any other question?
Good morning, my name is Robin Kleinans. I'm with the Ministry of Justice, Directorate Legislative Drafting. To the panel, I have a question with regards to how you think quantum computing would be able to be either utilized within the regulation of AI, first of all, and second of all, with regards to the usage of AI as a tool, as it currently is, there is a worry with regards to the lack of copyright protections and the lack of intellectual property. So I was wondering if you could advise us now to move forward on those two issues. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. For the first one, yes, quantum computing can be utilized because it's emerging technology where you can deal with a lot of computing powers. So definitely that can be utilized. Secondly, in terms of AI, I hope you're talking about the regulation in terms of how AI can support. Is it right? If I correctly.
No. My question was with regards to actually the protection of intellectual property, the protection of and expanding copyright regulations, so as to, yes, we can continue using AI as a tool, but we need to ensure that the actual human intellectual property remain protected. So my question is with regards to that.
Yes, it's I think related to copyright and what exactly we are doing innovation about that can be protected. Yes, that is definitely can be done with the help of regulation. There are, as per my knowledge, there is two types of regulation for protecting your content as well as your innovations, what you are doing. One within the country and one is in globally. So definitely you may search on it, but yes. And AI can also definitely help into, protecting that aspect because these days, globally a repository is utilized to check whether it has been utilized, the plagiarism and all. So yeah, I think that can definitely work with that.
Indeed. Two more questions, but I just wanted to add also to what she have asked, because I remember the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture recently also had discussions around that, on how actually to protect your work, and they are also looking into digitizing your work as or protecting your intellectual property whenever you put it on the internet. How can it be protected? And where would you go if you see that somebody else is using your work without your permission, and how you can go about the copyright and actually using AI to advance your work? They actually had that discussion recently at Arabosh. I was there. So yeah, if you may also want to contact them through UNESCO and NATCOM, they actually had a discussion on that. Any other question? We answered most of the questions.
Yes, good day. My name is Alfred. About 2 years back, the hackers sort of targeted Namibia. It was a front page story in the Namibian. Hackers target Namibia. The mere fact that they had the courage to want to hack us basically means they must have convinced themselves that we are not infallible. My question therefore is, what gives us that sense of security that our data is safe and all that? What are those firewalls that we use to protect our data? I hope I'm clear.
Yes. Thank you so much for your question. I understand about the data privacy, and definitely it's all about cybersecurity. Again, I would say the first thing is awareness, but apart from awareness, we should have an implementation of cybersecurity, and might be the country is busy implementing the cybersecurity policy as well. On top of this, at the ground level, like you mentioned about the firewalls and the UTMs, definitely that should be used, and we should have some of the tips I can give you, like we should have a CERT, Common Emergency Response Team, which can definitely handle if anything happen, and they can restrict if, the affected environment. apart from it, you could have a monitoring team, you can have a detection team. So there are steps, and if I collect everything in a one umbrella, we should say we need to implement a kind of, security operations centers so that we can we can, technically also see how we can protect our data.
Maybe just to amplify that, can we just give our director also an opportunity just to add on to that important question in terms of how are we safeguarding our digital infrastructure in Namibia?
Okay, thank you, Joe. I also need to stand for the viewers. And face which direction? Here or here? Anyway. Okay, here. No, thank you very much for the opportunity and the question, very important. What is important is that each one of us should secure ourselves with or without a law or a policy. When it comes to the firewalls, it's a responsibility of every individual organization to ensure that you put your measures in place. The law can come in to prosecute and set the fines and all the necessary punishments required. But it's important, I think there was a mention of awareness. As a country, we put in place the National Cybersecurity Strategy, which highlight the pillars that we need to focus on, and also creating awareness. I think Shoki asked earlier whether any of us are aware of the sessions that we host for individual organizations and for the members of the public, and this we do physically and virtually. So it depends if you want us to come to your organization, but it's important is that you invest in cybersecurity. Now, there was a mention of a national cybersecurity incident response team that is in place. I just want to highlight that as a country, we've established that under the Communication Regulatory Authority of Namibia, and the idea is basically just to ensure that that's a focal point for all the cybersecurity issues. The past week I've seen, I'm not sure, maybe some of your organizations have received that communication, that the regulator, which is CRAN, is actually requesting in organizations to identify focal persons because they've identified the critical information infrastructure. That as an energy sector, as a financial sector, you are quite critical. If your network is compromised, then a lot of damage can be done. But that doesn't mean that all other sectors are not important. So, but it's important that we invest. When we talk during our sessions in terms of cybersecurity awareness sessions, what we do, we encourage that we have management at those sessions to set the tone. When IT comes to you to say you that my infrastructure is aging, as management, as executive, you should be able to hear what they are saying. You should understand, because the older your infrastructure, the more vulnerable you are as an organization. So there are a couple of things really that as individual organizations you ought to do to protect yourself. And there was a mention of the data protection bill that we are busy with. That part, the bill makes provision for the establishment of a data protection authority. What the data protection authority then ought to do, and I think Mr. Johannes mentioned to say how many countries in Africa have the law and the authorities and all that. What it ought to do is basically to ensure that every processor and controller of your data should make sure that they put measures in place to protect your information. I give this example. If I go to Netis to register my vehicle or to get my license, I give you my information for that purpose, and you must use it for that purpose. Now, here I am, because I passed through red lights, then the police or city police finds me. How do they find me? Because the system is linked to that of city police and NATIS, and they are able to identify this number plate and this ID and all that. But I only gave my information to NATIS to register my vehicle or to get a license. So what we are saying is put measures in place, and as a data subject, the owner of that information, I must know what you're using my information for. So these are the measures really that we are putting in place to ensure that everybody that processes the information should safeguard the information or the data of this individual. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Melinda, for that clarity. I think we are a little bit behind our time, and let's continue the conversation as we break into subsections with our breakaway sessions. Shoki, just give us an overview of what's going to happen during our breakaway sessions and which topic is going to be in which room.
Okay. Just before we get, as we close off with this panel discussion, I think it's important to also accommodate our virtual participants as we close off. I think there's a comment here from Victoria Nana Hangula. She says, the talk is indeed informative regarding AI and its utility for national issues in Namibia. Very interesting is the ethical aspect. Very important is data protection and privacy. Thank you for sharing. And I think we can close our panel discussion on that note. Can we give our panel a big round of applause?
Thank you.
But before we get off this panel, of course, we have some interactive sessions that we will break away. But before that, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the Honorable Maria Elago. She is the chairperson of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on ICT and Innovation. May we please give her a round of applause. It's always good to have policy makers, lawmakers with us, because then they get to appreciate the conversations that we are having, and they also get to understand when with the ministry, the stakeholders come up with a law that is relevant, because technology is forever changing, then they are well prepared, well versed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed, Shoki. And I also just don't want to get rid of Mr. Jane without giving his,
final
word to what Africa should do, what Africa should be careful of when it comes to the utilization of AI, and what we can learn from other people and the collaborations that we should look out for.
No, thank you so much. And with the final words, I would like to mention that to harness the power of AI, definitely we need more collaborations, more concrete education, knowledge transfer, better infrastructure, and definitely a proper strategy. Definitely ministries and all, they are busy with it. And I'm sure not only this country, throughout the Africa, we need to push for this. So with that, I would give you a good luck to learn more and contribute towards Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so in terms of our breakaway sessions, of course, breakaway A will be in Brandberg Hall. And then for breakaway B, we are in Gamsberg. And then breakaway C will be at this very same platform, which is our plenary. And breakaway D will be Ruacana at the Safari Court just across this building. Maybe my colleague will take you through now in terms of the topics that will be covered.
Yes, in venue A, there will be our speaker, Mr. Million Andorra, unless he delegated, of course, and the topic will be strategic alignment of AI and automation, in support of your digital transformation. Jen, if you are interested in that, it will be discussed in venue A. And in venue B, we have Ms. Zaniwe Azari. She is from she is a Yango Public Policy Vice President. She will be speaking about unlocking urban mobility with Yango, exploring digital platforms, innovations, and technology applications. That will be in venue B. And in venue C, we'll be having Mr. Benjamin Okoli. He is a sales manager at West Africa Kaspersky. This word torments me. So he will be speaking about how Kaspersky's comprehensive security extended detention and response solution and centralized with threats of artificial intelligence or threat intelligence. And then in venue D, which will be in the Zambezi, there will be Mr. Delon Pians, I hope I got his name correct, defense engineer at Snowed Technologies. He will be speaking about, this is quite an interesting topic. I've seen you get hacked. AI real-time attack simulation. So there you have your topics. Whichever you're interested in, you just follow, or you, some of our colleagues can also direct you. But some of the venues already have branding as to this is venue A, B, or C, or D.
Just to remind you once again, breakaway is Brandberg, breakaway B is Hamsberg, and breakaway C is the plenary. This is now where we are. And then breakaway D will be Rakana as at the Safari Court, just the building across us. We also like to remind the audience and that are here that before you go for lunch, please make sure that you have scanned your QR code, because you will not have access to lunch. You remember when your grade 1 teacher said, who's in the class? Did you tick? Then she will tick, tick, tick. But if you are not in the class, you will be marked what? So it's the same scenario. If you did not scan your QR code, you will be marked as absent, and you will not also benefit in terms of a lunch meal, unfortunately.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 30 minutes of our discussions, and then we come back to the plenary, please.
Thank you so much.
Is it visible?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, maybe just some quick introductions once again from my side. My name is Benjamin Okolie. I'm the sales manager for Kaspersky, just to save everyone the stress of having to remember. Today we would pretty much be talking about Kaspersky's next XDR expert, powered by our threat intelligence. What is the story behind it? What even is this XDR that we speak about? What are some of the challenges that we've seen in cybersecurity as a whole that has led us to develop our own XDR? As part of our next product line, all right, so we did recently launch a product line or licensing tier called Kaspersky Next. As part of this, we introduced the Kaspersky Next XDR Expert. So this whole solution is part of Kaspersky's XDR approach and provides an all-encompassing view of your organization's cybersecurity posture, right? The idea is we're trying to create this single pane of glass, adding some additional detection and response capabilities. And we'll go into these guys a bit deeper as we progress. But here we look at some of the tiers. So we have two tiers within the XDR pretty much. The first one is the Kaspersky XDR Core. What exactly this is, what are the key components here, we will discuss. And then we have the Kaspersky Next XDR Expert. The licensing model is as follows. It's pretty much based on the number of users. We're looking at like 1, 2, 3 year subscriptions available, and the minimum purchase would start from 250 users. So based on surveys, what is the story behind the XDR? Why do people need XDRs? We looked at the top reasons for implementations of an XDR, and we look at the prioritization of alerts. For our security analysts, there is the question of alert fatigue. There's a lot coming in. How do we actually find the needle in the haystack? How do we properly prioritize these alerts to find the ones that actually require the most attention now? The next part is improving the detection and detection of advanced threats as a whole. So how do we do this? How do we go about implementing something to cater for this, right? And this is one of the reasons based on surveys why people have opted for an XDR. And then more efficient threat and forensics investigations. We need to be able to get some memory dumps, process dumps from endpoints. For example, in the case of an incident, how do we carry out our investigation process? How do we go on to run our threat containment, isolate hosts, quarantine, things like that, right? And these are the reasons why people have looked at the implementation of an XDR. And what are the main desired outcomes that we've seen from these surveys as well? We've seen, the need for enhanced threat detection and response, which the name will suggest, improved fidelity and prioritization of the security alerts, and then a centralized management hub for security operations, which brings us back to that single pane of glass conversation that we started with. So this XDR has to be a way for us to consolidate data, has to be a way for us to bring everything together. And so still based on surveys, we look at the amount of data sources that people have in their environment. And, very, very small percent coming in at 3%, like 3% coming in at fewer than 5 data sources, 17% coming in at 5 to 10, 50% the largest coming in at 11 to 15 data sources. But I guess the main idea here is we have people that are running up to 25 data sources. How do we then go on to consolidate? How do we make operations easy for our security teams? And so look at the expected impact of this XDR as per the survey, and 52% of the users are suggesting that they want the XDR to supplement what they already have. So they don't want it to necessarily come in to replace anything. They want it to be an add-on. They want it to be an additional layer of security within the organization. 44% looking at the XDR being a way for them to consolidate their current security operations technologies into this single pane of glass approach that I've just spoken about. And then for like the smaller percentages, 2% were saying they're looking at the XDR being a way to replace one or more of their current security technologies, which is not necessarily wrong. It's not like there's nothing wrong with having these expectations, right? As you find the nature of the XDRs, maybe based on a correlation engine, for example, may prompt you towards, like, for example, replacing a SIM with it, right? And so there's no problem with having these expectations. And then for like another 2%, they're not really sure, and they believe it's a bit too early to tell, considering that it might be a relatively new technology. And so we look at the XDR being Kaspersky XDR, looking at protecting all of these key data sources. And again, per survey, what are the most important data sources for security operations? And we're seeing the endpoint security data. We're seeing the threat intelligence feeds, these data feeds, logs, data from multiple security devices, cloud security posture management, NetFlow, VPCs, malware sandbox, SaaS security posture management, and many more, right? So I think the main idea or the main point remains the same. There's a lot of data sources. How are we supposed to manage all of these data sources? You find them emanating from like their own different technologies that have their own management platforms. How are the security team supposed to log into this platform, log into that platform, there's a lot, right? So how are we supposed to manage it? And so Kaspersky actually started the XDR approach as far back as 2017. This was like 2 years before the term XDR itself was coined. So we started this as our native XDR, and as per naming, was the idea here? The idea was EDRs were already common. There was conversations around the endpoint detection and response, and then we asked ourselves, why are we limiting the detection and response capabilities to the endpoints? How do we do more? How do we interact on the network level? How do we react? How do we work with the mail servers? How do we work with, for example, proxy servers? And so we developed our Kaspersky anti-targeted attack platform to work alongside our endpoint detection and response. And so these guys together with the endpoint detection and response covering the endpoint bit had the Kaspersky anti-targeted attack platform, or KATA for short, covering the rest. And this is how we created our own native XDR. And again, this was before the XDR term itself was even coined. So we just did it from the point of like understanding the security trends and wanting to create more coverage for the security teams, right? But then, it's great, really strong tool, but then there was like a bit of a slight challenge. It's not really a major challenge, but it was definitely a slight challenge. And the challenge is here on screen. As the name would suggest, native, everything was tied to Kaspersky. So as you'd find vendor A product, tight integration with vendor A's second product, third product, fourth product. So only the vendor A's product, right? In the case, Kaspersky product. And when we look outside, we see other vendor products that other users might be using in their organizations, and they want to be able to integrate into the XDR. But unfortunately, that native XDR, this was a bit difficult. Obviously, we did have people that were still, happy, trusting us and having all of our products and running the native XDR. And this was definitely not a problem or challenge to anyone. But we asked ourselves, how do we go on to spread our arms? How do we go on to accommodate more people? So we moved on to the open XDR. This is the main tag of the Kaspersky Next XDR Expert, which is the open XDR, providing us that flexibility and vendor agnostic capability, right? So we are not restricting ourselves to just our products. We're then able to integrate and bring in other products as well, maintaining this single pane of glass. So we want to be able to work with other vendor products that you have in your environment. We want to be able to come in there, integrate, consolidate this data into the single place for you to then go on to visualize, go on to respond, go on to play out case management and the likes, which we'll get a bit deeper into in a bit. And so what are some of the key technologies behind the Kaspersky Extended Detection and Response? This is the Kaspersky Next XDR Expert. The first part, one of the most important parts, is the Kaspersky Unified Monitoring and Analysis Platform. This is the correlation engine. This is our SIM solution. This allows us to now ingest telemetry from all of these multiple log sources that you'd have in your environment. Now, as part of the extended detection and response, we're also bringing in the Kaspersky Next EDR Foundations, which is pretty much our endpoint protection solution, alongside the Kaspersky Endpoint Detection and Response Experts, providing us some more capabilities, which we would look at in a bit. So on screen, we would have like a much deeper dive into the XDR expert composition, and it looks just like this. Main goal is to have this open single management platform, right? And within the single management platform, we want to first off provide this centralized asset management. We're providing the centralized asset management. We're providing this log management or data lake, again, thanks to the correlation engine that we have. Providing the dashboard and reporting, providing the threat detection and cross-correlation capabilities. We're looking at case management, making it easier for us to find or spot detections, and then, assign it to an analyst, right? It's always very convenient. We have our team of analysts already on board. The detection is made. Why don't we go on to forward this to one of the analysts and say, okay, this is your responsibility now. Let us look into this alert, confirm or validate that it is not an incident. If it is an incident, then we start the incident response process. But this is now your responsibility as per the case management feature. Then we should now be able to create playbooks. This allows us to create incident response playbooks. So we're saying if a detection is made as per certain rules being met or certain criteria being met, what are we supposed to do? We're then able to create these playbooks to allow us to respond. We're automating the response process pretty much. And this could be as simple as, on a certain detection, run a malware scan on critical areas. It seems straightforward, but you'd find that as per standard technologies, there's the need for the analysts to then go on to start logging on to like a separate endpoint management solution, starting to create like this malware scan tasks. And this is obviously time consuming. We're really not responding as quickly as we should. Right. So with the ability to then create these incident response playbooks, the moment there's any detection, we're then able to respond as quickly as possible. We've seen some very, very interesting use cases. We've seen use cases around someone seeing some interesting communication via the firewall, right? So the firewall entries, firewall logs show communication to a potentially malicious IP, right? And we find this communication, and immediately we're able to create like some rules, response via the correlation engine. You could respond via scripts, for example. And one of them was able to write like a bash script to add a rule to his firewall. So he added a firewall rule on a correlation rule being hit. And this was just a very interesting way for them to see the true capabilities of the solution. Let's make it more, making the response process much faster. Things like isolating a host on certain rules being met, on certain triggers, we should be able to run these playbooks. And then these playbooks could be, for example, isolating the host. And so immediately we take the host off of the internet. We've gone on to prevent the potential exfiltration of data and also killed any potential lateral movement, or any communication to CNC as well, right? So these playbooks give us this flexibility, this speed, this agility that's required in the current security operations. So we're also providing very extensive dashboards and reporting, which is a very key part. And very importantly, third-party connectors, again, pushing the message that we are open and we are not, restricted to run with only our solutions. We're actually happy to accommodate other solutions. And we have a bunch of these connectors out of the box that would allow us to integrate with a lot of the popular vendors that for your firewalls, for your routers, for your switches and the like. So we do not have any problems with these integrations. Now on this side, you're going to see some interesting parts. Here we're looking at enrichment, and there's the first part of the enrichment via the Kaspersky Threat Intelligence, which we'll touch on in a bit. And then the other part is the Kaspersky Endpoint product. So within the Kaspersky Next XDR Expert, the licensing also includes our endpoint protection. So we are covering the endpoints and more. All right, so there's a small difference between that and the XDR core, as the XDR core contains the exact same thing, except the endpoint product. And the idea here is we understand that not everyone wants to change what they already have from an endpoint perspective, and this is fine. So if you already have something that you run in your endpoint environment and you are comfortable with it, even though we will obviously always recommend that you at least give our endpoint protection a try. We understand that there's cases where, organizations have run for 7, 10 years and they don't want to change. It's fine. We are now providing this XDR core that will only contain this open single management platform, which is the SMP plus the correlation engine, Kaspersky Unified Monitoring and Analysis platform. So able to make all of this available, you still have the third-party connectors, you still have everything, and you still have the option to integrate with the Kaspersky Threat Intelligence for additional enrichment purposes. And so from like a tier comparison perspective, just to have this view, within the XDR core, you have access to third-party connectors and the likes, the threat detection, cross-correlation, asset management, the dashboards and reporting. You're also getting the case management, the response and automation and orchestration via playbooks, ability to build an investigation graph rather, right? Just to have like a clearer picture of what exactly could be happening within the organization. We have the deployment toolkit, we have the open API support. You'll find that within the core, unfortunately, the endpoint functionality is in there. But within the expert, you then have the endpoint functionality, which would then include automated, semi-automated, and manual detections, monitoring across all of the protected endpoints, general threat containment, allowing us to isolate hosts, allowing us to quarantine files, allowing us to delete objects, the recovery options, things like remediation engine, which we do have as part of our endpoint protection suite. So we do have the behavior detection modules, exploit prevention, remediation engine. These are more of our machine learning components. And we're looking at coverage for the mobile as well. So we're not just providing mobile device management, but mobile threat defense as well. And then there's also the cloud discovery and blocking and security for Microsoft Office 365. Sorry, hold on. All right. Yeah, so we're also providing the security for Microsoft Office 365. So on here, we are able to provide anti-spam, anti-phishing, anti-malware capabilities for your Microsoft Office 365 space. And we are then bringing in trainings. And these trainings come in the form of the CITO, or rather Cybersecurity for IT Online. So the idea is we're providing these vendor agnostic trainings as well for your security admins. So this will be trainings on AD security, server security, malware and exploits, potentially unwanted programs and things like that, right? So we're not just providing the technologies, but we're also assisting with the people. And so we look at the general concept of people, processes and technologies, and you find that within this small next XDR experts, there's a lot of focus on the technologies and the people as well. So this is definitely just like a small one-pager that shows the main differences between the XDR core and the next XDR experts. So yeah, then we move on to the Kaspersky data feeds. We would speak again on this as part of our intelligence, right? How we looked at enrichment. How are we going to enrich working with the XDR? Now, our Kaspersky threat data feeds pretty much deliver real-time intelligence. So we're providing real-time information to help organizations protect their infrastructure from cyber threats. These feeds would pretty much be malicious IPs, phishing websites, and the likes, right? So this is another really neat way to assist with the prioritization of alerts. So say there's a lot of telemetry coming in, there's a lot of communication being spotted, firewall logs are reporting some communication to some servers, for example, to some IP addresses, some URLs. There's a lot of these communications that happen on a daily. How do we go on to focus on the ones that are of interest? The threat data feeds from Kaspersky would actually provide us this information, right? It's enriching the telemetry, helping us immediately flag or find those needles in the haystack. We're able to immediately spot and say, this communication is malicious simply because this URL that it's communicating to is part of our malicious URL feeds, for example. So we have a bunch of these feeds available, and one of the key things, or part of the key things of the feeds would be that they are continuously updated. So we continuously update our threat intelligence just to ensure that we're providing near zero false positive rates. I guess one other neat thing to note about our intelligence is how we get the intelligence. You know, we don't just go on to give everything like we won't just take anything and give people, right? The idea is when we get our intelligence from our log sources, we then go on to implement a so-called human-machine model, where we first off have machine learning modules coming through that intelligence. And then we go on to bring in so-called human TI, which would then be the Kaspersky SOC team, the Kaspersky Global Research and Analysis team, the Kaspersky ICS set team. Even when we're looking at the operational technology space, there's the industrial control systems, your SCADA, PLCs. There's like intelligence catered for them as well. And so when we've combed through this intelligence, we're then going to feed it to our people just to ensure this near zero false positive rates. So we are pretty much sure that if there's any detection made from our feeds, it is definitely malicious, right? So this is one way of enriching the telemetry just to make the lives of our security analysts much easier. And we're also providing this rich and meaningful context, which would then mean that the data is immediately actionable, and there's a number of delivery formats. So there's delivery formats per standard would deliver in JSON, but we have a feed utility that can then allow us to convert to, say, sticks, OpenIOC, whatever format that's most comfortable for the organization. And we're also able to ingest these guys into other security controls. For example, your next generation firewalls, right? So there could be like feeds dedicated to these guys. There could be network related feeds that you could ingest in your IDSs, IPSs, your proxies, your next generation firewalls, or you could even work directly with your SIM. And then one thing maybe to point out here is that these feeds aren't always easily ingested by a lot of, I guess, security controls. For example, there are some SIM solutions that unfortunately can't just work with these data feeds, unfortunately, right? So how do we help them? We help them by creating a so-called threat intelligence platform, which we call CyberTrace. CyberTrace is our threat intelligence platform. It integrates these data feeds from multiple sources, and it acts as like this off tool, right? Maybe just for it to make sense, I'll show this small diagram here. Telemetry comes from our log sources. The raw logs are forwarded to the SIM. These events will then be forwarded to CyberTrace. Now, CyberTrace is going to run the rapid matching what is coming from the SIM against those threat data feeds, against the general intelligence, right? And is looking for matches. So where it sees matches, for example, hashes, we see some hash feeds, and we see some malicious process that was started, and this hash matches a hash that we know to be malicious based on the malicious hash feed. We're then able to return those detection events back to the correlation engine, or in this case, a SIM solution. And then it makes for easier visualization. Now, all of a sudden, we've immediately assisted the analysts in prioritizing that alert. Now, the analyst is able to immediately look onto it, leverage on that intelligence without even having to click too many things, right? The events were already forwarded by default, and he has already received a response. And now he has the malicious verdict. And all of a sudden, the incident response process internally can start much quicker. CyberTrace allows us to also ingest like internal TI. So you could have your own internal feeds. You have the visualization from the dashboard of your SIM, and also the visualization from the CyberTrace dashboard itself. And some of the main features of CyberTrace include a retrospective analysis feature or retroscan. This is personally one of my favorites. One of my favorites because of the cybersecurity situation that we have, right? There could be something that is found today, but there isn't enough information to suggest that this thing is malicious. So what then happens in the next week or in the next two? The retrospective analysis comes in here. The retrospective analysis allows CyberTrace to actually look back at some of those indicators that it found. Now, these indicators could be those IP addresses, URLs, hashes. CyberTrace can then go back and say, remember this thing we saw 2 weeks ago? We didn't have enough information then, but we have something now to suggest that this guy is malicious. And this then points us towards starting, the necessary investigation or incident response processes internally. But that retrospective analysis is one of the key features of CyberTrace. We then have the so-called normalization feature as well. And this allows us to spot what malware will try to do, right? So there's this trick. Malware will try to obfuscate their communication, right? And they do this via so-called authorization string and decimal representation system, right? The idea is, say, http://github.com@14 or something, some random decimal. What happens is, unfortunately, a lot of security systems miss this, but CyberTrace wouldn't, right? The idea here is github.com is actually acting as the authorization string, and the main communication is being made to that decimal representation after the @ So that could be like a decimal representation of some IP address or some malicious URL. So unfortunately, when the security systems see the communication to github.com, a lot of them miss it without focusing on that decimal representation and trying to think of GitHub as the authorization string. So CyberTrace is able to run that normalization and point us in that direction to say, no, malware, this is definitely a malicious communication. Please, we need to act immediately, right? So this is a very great feature of CyberTrace. Obviously, the automated matching of these events, just to pretty much act as the main source or a source of enrichment. And then it also provides this multi-tenancy support. So there's the MSSP support. There's the, even for large enterprises with multiple branches, it can make for good viewing to have this ability to, have multiple branches or subsidiaries, and then you have multiple tenants per subsidiary within CyberTrace. So yeah, that's from a much higher level. We've been able to go through the Kaspersky XDR, the main story behind the XDR, and some conversations around the Kaspersky intelligence, how this works with with our XDR and even other SIEM solutions to act as a source of enrichment of data, just to make the prioritization of alert situation much easier and make the general life of our admins or security analysts easier as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, everyone. And if there's any questions, please, we can take them.
Very well. Can we give him a round of applause? Are we together? I want to see from the house if we have any questions on that great presentation on their comprehensive security extend detection and response solution, then centralized with threat intelligence. Any questions from the house on that presentation? Yes, there's one question there behind. Can I be assisted by the team so that we just facilitate quickly that question with Mr. Benjamin, who is joining us virtually from West Africa. Right. Okay, while we still fix that, please don't forget to continue using the hashtag ICT Summit, hashtag artificial intelligence, hashtag digital transformation. Remember, I do see some traffic online happening. The price is a secret for now, but definitely you'll be surprised as we announce that prize tomorrow during the closing ceremony and also during the Youth Day. But let's give over to one of our participants to quickly pose that question.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. My question is in two parts. So the first one is, how does XDR, how does it deal with on-prem infrastructure versus many of us are using cloud systems. So how does that work? It wasn't clear in the presentation how your platforms deal with that. And the other question would be, we see a lot of cyber incidences that are AI initiated. So how do you also, like AI is fighting AI now, so what is happening? How do we get in between and know which one is malicious AI and which one is the proper AI? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Benjamin, if you can still hear me, I hope you got those questions.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. So yeah, thank you very much for the questions. To take the first one, with like on-prem or cloud or whatever or hybrid infrastructure that you have, which we even see, we have no problems here. We're able to support all of them. The main idea here for us is collecting the telemetry. And for us, we have a bunch of collectors. We have a bunch of ways to collect this telemetry. So the main thing is bringing telemetry onto the systems, and we don't prioritize on-prem. We can take on-prem, we can take cloud. We even have people that forward their telemetry from their O365 onto the platform. So we have collectors for them. So these collectors can run using like a JSON format. We're able to get the necessary telemetry required and then act on this telemetry within the platform itself on-prem. So we don't have any problems integrating with any cloud-based offering that you have, really. And then maybe to the point of the detection techniques, right, or prevention, rather, fighting AI with AI. I guess it's very important to note that Kaspersky does have a next-generation anti-malware engine. And this next-generation anti-malware engine combines a bunch of things. It combines the regular or known signature-based detection that everyone knows, alongside some behavior detection modules and a sandbox. Right, so the main idea is we are trying to make the malware show itself, right? We create this sandboxing technique where the sandbox actually emulates actual human behavior, right? So whatever malware activity or malicious activity that will be attempted will be spotted within the sandbox, and then we can draw a verdict. Now we're also then going on to hold or work with the cloud threat intelligence database via the Kaspersky security network that doesn't just hold malware signatures, but the so-called behavior stream signatures as well, or BSS. So we understand patterns of behavior of malware, and these patterns of behavior will then be matched by the behavior detection module that we have within the engine. So this is how we're also able to combat from this side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benjamin. I think your namesake also asked you a question, strangely enough. So any other question from the plenary here before we conclude this session? Can I see any indication from the House? All right. Oh, there's one here. There we go. Just introduce yourself. Just please stand for the sake of our virtual participants as well.
All right, good day. Mr. Benjamin indicated that they accommodate third-party solution. I just wanted to find out what are some of the disadvantages for accommodating third-party solution in terms of weaknesses and bridges.
Very well. Mr. Benjamin, it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, I guess in terms of like weaknesses, when you bring in third-party solutions, the main detection engines are from the third-party solution, so we can't, I guess, embed our own detection technologies in there. Say, for example, from the level of endpoint, say you're running a different endpoint protection solution, for example, we wouldn't be able to say that like we can't guarantee that protection because it isn't our endpoint protection solution in there. We are only collecting the telemetry to enhance the visibility for the security teams. But if it were to be our own protection in there, we can definitely go on to say that, we have that guarantee. We're part of a lot of independent reviews, A/B tests and the likes. We're pretty much the most tested vendor out there. So you could actually see these findings that actually point towards our technology being, right up there. But unfortunately, when it's someone else's technology in there, we can't vouch for it. We can only bring in what they say they are seeing and provide a single pane of glass for the security teams, consolidate the data. But the data collection itself is by the third-party solution.
Oh, we just lost Mr. Benjamin. I think he basically touched it a bit. Would like to thank him for his presentation. Of course, we will move on with our program. Of course, as you look at your time, we are left with a few minutes before lunch, and I don't want to be that person between you and your lunch, destroying that important part. But I would just like to make some few announcements. I don't know if my co-host wants to join me on stage. She's running away from me. Before we close off the first session, your mic is here with Ms. Justine. So we were supposed to have a panel discussion touching base on harnessing the power of AI in research, science, and technology to address Namibia's challenges such as water, energy, food security, One Health, climate change, and sustainable development. Now, what we will do is we'll arrange that, and we will do it immediately when we return after a lunch, and that will be then followed by the social media mediated gender-based violence, charting a way forward. I think that's also a very interesting one. Okay. My team, I think I can hear an echo. Okay, thank you so much. So we'll have those conversations right after lunch. What do you think, Asteria?
Indeed, we're just waiting for the rest of the breakaway sessions to conclude. I think we'll just need to establish whether they're done or not, but they should be done by now, so that we break away for lunch.
Yeah, so what will happen with lunch in terms of the arrangements? As we said, please ensure that you have registered so that our automated system can issue you a meal card. But if you have registered as an online participant, please just remain in the hall. We will try to resolve the issue of how we can accommodate you. And for our high dignitaries and those that have received the meal cards, we'll then move to the restaurant across this building where we are now. And then 2 o'clock sharp, we are all back.
Indeed. Some of our colleagues will also be helping with issuing some meal tickets to those, I think, who did not get a chance to register online. Enjoy your lunch. Let's get back here at 2 o'clock. We will then be giving out some of the goodies that were given by some of our sponsors. We will be asking you questions. You answer, you get something.
So don't forget to participate. Also, if you're finding yourself virtually, please also do comment, share the post. Remember to use the hashtags, and let's have a conversation online also, so that everyone that's also following either via Teams or our live streaming platforms can also have an opportunity to engage with our panelists, speakers, and you name it. For now,
do or die.
We got it.
It did it not racist. It missed.
All right. We also want to acknowledge our executive director that's here with us, Dr. Audrey Mate. Sir, we acknowledge your presence. Thank you so much for joining us. But for now, it's bye-bye, and we'll see you after 2 o'clock.